So hello, Erik. Nice to have you back.
Hello.
How is it going so far? In the last year, what do you have come up with? You have contributed to many festivals and events and did so many talks, I think, in the last 2 years throughout the pandemic. So how is it going for you?
Yeah, I think, it's always a journey where you, from project to project. So, yeah, for me, it's always very enjoyable when I do something that I haven't done before. And yeah, so there are some more short-term works that I do then. And also, for instance, with Thomas Mailander, I'm now working on a more long-term project. And then recently I finished that Empty Chair project, which is a book and a chair, and how that works together. So, it's always good that you do something that make you slightly uncomfortable. I think that's quite nice. When you do things and you are busy for a year with work and it's kind of something that you did before, then that's not very nice. I think it's better to push yourself constantly a little bit, which is not easy, of course. It sounds a bit like I'm bragging, but it's much more complicated to go that path than just doing things in a very easy way.
Yeah. So your personal work is largely photographic. So how do you think that people's relationships with the image and the photography medium itself changed in the last 20 years, maybe beginning with the 2000s?
Yeah, I think this is like a huge journey that has happened with photography, of course. At the moment, for instance, we see more images before lunch than somebody in the 18th century saw in their whole lifetime. So we as human beings have also become almost species of editors. So every day we have to decide which kind of emails to keep, which ones to throw away, where to look at, where to listen to, where not to listen to, which images that we take to throw away, which one we store. In a way, we are more kind of busy with deleting information than with storing or making information. And this has changed something to our way of looking at photography, for instance, also, where photography once was kind of a craft and an art that was done by the happy few, rich people with rich cameras and expensive cameras. And now it's completely democratic, which is a very good thing. But yeah, that means also that there is many, many more things made. And general people don't treat a photograph, it's not there anymore to keep. A photograph is more it has a very short life cycle. It's used for something and then it's gone. But it's more the artists and the photographers nowadays that also try to maybe pause this, what is happening in society with imagery, that they like to pause it. That people not purely consume imagery, but they also stop at one moment and then look a little bit closer at one photograph. Yeah, that is the role also, I think, of what I'm doing. And that's also what I enjoy, because I think that many photographs already have been taken, but yeah, not all the stories behind every photograph is already told yet. So that is something quite important, I think. And in my case, I take photographs like every other person takes photographs, but I look in a way much more closer at the photographs that other people took. It's almost like a visual archaeology that I see if I can find hidden stories in there.
Yeah, over the years, you have published several books that compile these amateur images that you're mentioning. And you have been also the editor of alternative photography publication, which is called Usual Photography since 2000. So what have you experienced so far in terms of the taste of humanity? Because when you think about today, we find ourselves questioning the meaning of reality, but also trying to adapt to change in a world where the physical realities seem to fuse with the virtual realities. How do you think that the balance there, or how do you find the relationship between the reality and the fantasy for today by means of image?
Yeah, I think there has been say since 2000 like an enormous transition, of course, where imagery at that moment was always printed, and there was of course much less. So if you see with that enormously increased, and that it's still increasing, and we are maybe still not at the top of the iceberg with that. But that has also a lot to do with the role of images completely changed. So that's what I was saying before. Like we really don't look so much at photographs anymore. We just use them, and they're a tool. It's almost like opening and closing a door. You don't even think about it anymore. And that is also for me, for instance, an interesting thing. So because I'm just generally more curious, so I like these kind of developments, like developments, how people take selfies of each other, how stupid they constantly copy each other online. For me, that's just like a kind of visual food to see, like, where can I make an association, where can I do something with that in the case that in such a way that people really also think like, oh, is that us taking these pictures? And as an artist or a photographer, that never stops in a way, because you constantly, this constantly moves, and you move with the new trends and with the, but you also try to kind of push them a little bit over, or hold a mirror in front of people's face just to see what their behavior is. And that is something I really much enjoy. And, because I also think that I just react on what other people make, and then I take it from its original context, put it in a new context. Yeah, that's more the art of the reappropriation then.
So the age of artificial intelligence has delivered some original stories as well without human involvement. Since you're an artist, creator, publisher, and also curator dealing with people's stories, what do you think about telling stories about people in an artistic setting with less or no human contribution? What do you think about this new trends without human contribution?
Yeah, I mean, the possibilities with that are, of course, almost endless also. And the fact that this is like automatically generated by algorithms or by, I mean, there will be always these kind of new developments, but for me, it's more interesting what kind of story it tells. And I mean, when you can make like a fictive family history, maybe completely out of artificial intelligence, that is actually something very interesting then. But I am mostly interested in the stories it tells. So there will be always a development in new tools and new ways of doing things. But that is also a tool, that is something where we work with. And it's bizarre that, I mean, virtual reality in a way it is now known almost is already 20 years old. 20 years ago, they were also wearing the same kind of, it changed a little bit, but it also never had an enormous breakthrough in that sense. So at one point we thought that everybody's going to walk with these glasses, but it's also nice to see what happens with that. And I'm just curious more in the outcome and what you can do with it than that I start to get involved completely in that technique or in that world, or I react on it.
So you mainly deal with nonsense and absurdity in your work, but maybe we can put a focus here on Empty Chair and then talking about this, which deals mainly with absence. So could you please briefly explain how you come up with this project and how it's compiled as an exhibition?
Yeah, I think one important thing is also that I think like when you make work out of existing materials, existing photographs, what I like to show is that this can be sometimes completely absurd, sometimes very funny, but also sometimes very sad or very ironic, for instance. So for me, it's not, I really like to see what kind of emotion that can come from there and what kind of strong emotion. And so I also made a few times work about my sister who, when I was 11, she was 9 and she died in a car accident. And for me, it's important that any kind of emotion that you also, that you make or that you make in your work, that people need to be surprised by that. I think that's also the role of art, that when you go to a museum and you think like, okay, I had a okay afternoon and it was okay what was shown there. I think that's not good, like people need to be either afraid, shocked, very touched, very they had to laugh a lot, or I mean, why do you otherwise go to a museum? Otherwise, you can go just to a decoration shop, like where they have wallpaper or then you know what you get there. For me, it's always to see like how can I also transform the meaning of a photograph. So in the case of the empty chair work, this is something I started with Karel de Mulder, who's a Belgian friend of mine. Yeah, we were also seeing sometimes that when you focus on there's in a way in an image where there's a lot of people, there's always kind of one empty chair. So when you focus on that, then it changes a little bit the meaning, because we did then the book which has 160 pages, and the book is called A Pictorial History of the Empty Chair, which is also a fictive history of this, and a bit blown up, but it shows then images from 1890 until now with the empty chair, and of course the empty chair in the images is often the chair that was the chair of the photographer who stepped out of the image and then took a picture. So, but here you see almost in a very strong way also in the work that when you change and you manipulate, the images are not manipulated, but the story is manipulated towards a certain direction. And then people start thinking like, wow, it's almost like that there is an empty chair in every photograph. And then it is funny, it is sad in a way, it is also melancholic, that's what people take out of it. And then I think it was interesting that I'm friends with a furniture producer, and how nice would it be to also create a real empty chair. So that's what we did. So then at the moment the chair is then produced in a quantity of 10,000, because in a way everyone deserves an empty chair. And then the chair, you can buy the book like like this shape it has, but you can buy the book, and the book is 120 euros, and then you will get the chair with it for free, or you can buy the chair and you get the book, and also the book itself can fit under the seat of the chair, because there are two clips, so in the end it's one object. And that is also nice for the storytelling. So I really like that, because I really like the fact that with ordinary images that the day before yesterday didn't mean anything yet, you take them out of its context, you make something with them, and then you suddenly can tell a story which is sometimes fictional, sometimes real, and that makes it special. And you also see if it works. So, for instance, I did this book called Shit, where I only, in the whole book, there's about 80 pictures of German Nazis that take a shit. Like that is almost a similar kind of thing where people think like, okay, that's disgusting. But on the other hand, it's also very, it is touching because it kind of humanizes them. But it's also ridiculous, and it's also horrible in a way what to see. So it has these mix of emotions, and that I think is very important in a work.
So I believe that this concept absence becomes more obscure with our digital lives and nowadays. When you think about today and the current status of living we have, or when you compare it to your youth or childhood, what do you think that the most absent thing we have as standing next to us as an empty chair, but we do not have the interaction, as you have mentioned, by means of feelings or confrontation? Maybe we can also add that.
I think that absence is also something very emotional, or it has a lot to do with memory and with a real emotion in that sense. And that is nowadays also quite complicated, of course. I mean, you see that, for instance, I find it very weird that, for instance, people can stream and download many films, but cinema visits at the moment are higher than ever. So it is quite nice that people also want to be tactile and they want to be physically with each other. That is also something after COVID, and like music festivals. I mean, there are more music festivals in the summer than ever, and people really like to be with a big crowd together. yeah, people are looking also at this moment of time where everything can be solved digitally. The contrary reaction is that we are looking for more authenticity, like at the moment, people buy vinyl again, like vinyl records. Yeah. I mean, for the quality, you don't have to do it, but they want to do it to hear the scratches again, yeah? And to really have this authentic feeling. And if you look in a lot of fields, this is always, those are waves that are coming, like why 10, 15 years ago, the quality of the music was the best with all the MP3 and now we go back to very bad quality again. The same is also with imagery, with photography. I think in Amsterdam here, for instance, not even photographers, but people in their 20s, they shoot analog again with cameras, like everybody does that. I mean, just because it delays the moment that you can look at the image. So of course the service is there that we immediately look at it, but then suddenly, if you have everything, you want to go back to the previous thing and have it more bad and more. That's interesting how that these developments and waves and with absence, this is the same thing. Like it's a hole in your memory, almost, and it's also not perfect. Absent is something which is kind of painful, or you lost someone, or there was something missing, or these are emotions that are not like a smooth sea. Like you constantly have to look at that. And in my work, I also. For instance, I made once a book. It was called Shining in Absence, and this is a book where it's a photography book, but there is no photograph in the whole book because it's only carriers where photographs have been on, like albums or frames, or where there's just like little traces of photographs, but you never see a photograph. And also I did one in almost every book, which is called number 14. It's with Polaroids with a big hole in. So that's also about absence in a way. So you see like hundreds of pictures taken on the beach, or Polaroids, and in the middle there's a big white hole. So then it turned out that this was an amateur photographer who did a summer job at the beach in Portugal, and he clipped out the people on the beach and he made buttons out of it. But what stays behind is an image where you see a little bit of a seascape and a person, remains of a person, but with a big hole in it. And in a way, those photographs are, I know for sure that they are, that Polaroid with a hole in it is much more interesting than the image that has been taken out and made into a button. Because absence makes you more curious. It immediately also triggers a story. And that is the power of absence in a way.
Yeah, true. Or maybe vice versa, we can also refer to your work, 24-hour photos, where you dismiss the absence and fill with the reality itself, with thousands of photography placed in a church, where you can have the tense feeling of having lost the absence, maybe. We can also refer to that.
I think the work with with 24 hours in photos is almost the reverse. That is the total presence of everything, and at the same time, when there's masses of photographs that show almost physically with how many images we live nowadays, it is all, but at the same time, it's also nothing. Where do you have to look? Like that is the interesting thing when it first was made, that installation. When you walk through, in a way you see all the images, but at the same time you see no image. I mean, because there are so many of them, and that is the feeling you get. And I think that sometimes that's something you can try even every day. You have one image that you hold in your hand, or that you look on that you put on your screen for a long time, one image, and then you start to think about what kind of story that there is behind that image. And that is a nice test to see how powerful one image is, because you have to force yourself to look at it longer than normal, and maybe you have to look at it 2 weeks, or maybe you have to print it out, hang it on the wall in your house, just to see how it works when you take an image out of its context and then suddenly you start to live with it and you start to find stories in it. And that is a very nice way of doing things, I think. Also, I mean, there's images everywhere, but again, I think that for artists, they are just the ones that have to put like a finger sometimes on one image or on one work and pause it and then show everyone, like, you can also look at it like this, like, so that's the same also with the empty chair work. Of course, it's in a way almost ridiculous because it's just images with an empty chair on there, but the imagination starts triggering when you find a similarity in hundreds of random pictures. Yeah, in that sense also a fictional story, but on the other hand, the emotion that you get from it is real and is authentic.
Thank you so much, Erik. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
My last question would be an hypothetical. I just want to give it a try and see what your answer is. So remember our interview was for the previous issue we had for the last autumn and winter for 212. And at that time, we were working closely with the ideology of living on Earth and how we collect our memories, our livings, or our history as Earthlings. So NASA had this golden records, you know this. They collected some information about humanity and they put it on the golden records and they send it to the space. If you were the curator of the next golden record for transferring the data to the space for the ones who could maybe one day discover our humanity, what would be your selection in putting it into that golden record in representing humanity from your books or your, maybe that could be one of your exhibition or one of your movies that you really like? What do you think that to put a kind of a different storytelling?
You mean a record like they made a vinyl or
yeah. They have put
yeah.
the encyclopedic information about human and so forth.
I mean, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and that was also, or the idea is very nice for this. I mean, it's not my idea, but for instance, since I was young, I was very much inspired by the work of Christian Boltanski, like a French artist. What he did as a collection or as a work is that he collected heartbeats of people. So in an exhibition, there was like a little recording studio, so people could wait in a waiting room, and then their heartbeat was recorded. And this is beautiful because every heartbeat is completely different. So it's almost like a fingerprint, and so in a way, it would be very nice to have like almost the heartbeats of everyone export that to outer space and maybe. Or the voices of everyone, or sometimes you can keep it very small to have a very big impact. Like, I find also sometimes on YouTube you see like that there is this trend that people count from 1 till 100. Mm-hmm. Why? I don't know why, but they record themselves counting from 1 to 100. I mean, I find that beautiful. Like I don't know why, but that has also to do that it is complete. Craziness, because everything is possible, but then I think it's quite nice to narrow that down and see if you can find something completely symbolic for this moment in time. And like that heartbeat, that was a beautiful idea, and so something like that, but then maybe
Thank
better.
You. But, this has been a great answer.
Will be hard to think of. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Erik.
Yeah, pleasure.
Is there anything you would like to add for the visitors of your exhibition in Istanbul coming up next?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but it's always good to, I mean, when you see images and they first glance, they have nothing to do with each other. I think this exhibition will also be nice because at first they are maybe 15 random images, but when you take a bit of longer time with them, then you're going to see things in them. So in a way, also, I think the general, on average, in a museum or in a festival, people look 6 to 9 seconds at a piece of work, and it's good to extend that, like maybe some works you can look less at, and some other works maybe much more, but it's quite nice to stay longer with an image to see like what can be behind there.
Thank you so much.
All right, pleasure.